event of the current ambassador, Chen, again was a coming together of friends, a coming together of comrades, an affirmation of a very, very constructive relationship that is founded on a win-win situation. We also know that he came to South Africa at the peak of COVID, and together we were able to use our own experiences, them coming from China, our own situation here, and being able to put an intervention program for the people of South Africa. That is something that is worth celebrating. Second, in terms of trade relations, in fact, trade between South Africa and China is now the biggest investor here in South Africa, and it also consumes the biggest of our own goods in terms of the agricultural products, the mineral resources, but also in terms of exchange of skills. We're quite delighted that it was also during his tenure that there's been a big growth of taking young South Africans to go and study in China and promote a people-to-people relationship through tourism, but also through youth skills development programs. And lastly, working together, we hosted the most historic BRICS summit that saw the expansion of BRICS. It happened here. Two, we also worked together on the Africa-China summit that also helped to strengthen the work of the forum. And lastly, as we bid him farewell, we bid him farewell as we now move towards celebrating 26 years of our diplomatic relationships. He was also a good man, and they were also a good family. They could relate to people of South Africa and their culture. They were actually also quite exposed to the cultural diversity of our country. And lastly, his departure surely will be also an add-on, because he's not going to be lost in the space. Going back to work in the government of the People's Republic of China and the Communist Party will continue to interact with him. We're looking forward to receiving the new ambassador.
Yeah, firstly is to thank Ambassador Chen Xiaodong of China to South Africa, who has been a remarkable servant of the Chinese people in our country, who did very well to elevate both party-to-party relations as well as people-to-people and country-to-country relations, has elevated trade relations between South Africa and China when he was here. He's still here, of course, but we are wishing him well as he goes back to Beijing. But from our side, we celebrated important moments. Our parties were born on the same month, same year. We celebrated our 100th anniversary together in the midst of COVID. And he arrived here in the middle of COVID, and he hit the ground running, serving the people of our country, using many other things, for instance, the PPEs, the masks, supplying those to our communities, with the Chinese government involved in curbing the spread of coronavirus. So he is an activist ambassador, and we want to thank him for his service. During this period, we also hosted the BRICS summit, and President Xi Jinping also came here. A wonderful period in which also important agreements were signed. When we were faced with the crisis of load shedding, the Chinese government, through its leadership as well, participated in providing us with some generators. I'm told that others are still to be delivered. So this is very important contribution that he made to our country. At party-to-party level as well, we are at a strategic level in terms of our relationship with the CPC. As you know, China is led by the Communist Party, and the development in China that is exceeding the development in the West is led by the Communist Party. This is very important because the Western countries do not want us to believe that a socialist system can be as successful. China is more powerful, more independent than many Western countries under capitalism. It's the only country in the world that has ended poverty. The so-called first world can't do it. That's why the Americans and the Western forces see it as a strategic adversary, because they don't want socialism to succeed. You see the Americans running around Taiwan Strait, trying to create problems in the name of maritime independence. I wonder one day if the Chinese decide to take their own warships and go to Cuba, and in between Cuba and the US, what the US will say, because China will say, well, we are using our independence of floating in the maritime freedom. So it is this consistent attacks on independence of other countries by the US and the Western countries that China has proven can be dealt with, but it has unified itself. It's a country that was colonized by almost 4 European powers: France, Portugal, Britain, Germany, and so forth. It's free now, and they must just accept it's an independent country. And that's why the unification of China is indivisible. It's going ahead, it's forging ahead. So we are happy to relate with the Communist Party of China and the Chinese people.
The relationship between South Africa and China started with the advance of democracy. Formally started in 1998 and has been growing stronger and stronger politically, but also on the trade side of things, we have now begun to see significant inroads of our goods to China, and in the recent hype that is in the market is not just avocados now from Limpopo and Mpumalanga, which are the most demanded. Now they are going for chicken feet and then the insides or fan of the chickens, and they seems to be going well in China. They are a delicacy meal, and those who are in that industry are now beginning to reap a lot of benefits out of the investments. So the economic-wise, we are doing well. We still have to do more, particularly on the textile and clothing. We still are struggling. It's more textile and clothing goods in South Africa than the other way around. So we also have to really support our textile and clothing industry through the master plans and ensure therefore that we also grow. And China, being a growing economy, is the most important market in the East, and then our relationship with them also evolves into BRICS. When we got invited, when the 4 members originally started and South Africa was invited, now BRICS has expanded to 10 member countries, which is now a sign of solidification of relationships, not just in politics, but also on trade, where if we do well in the manufacturing, if we do well in the beneficiations of our minerals, we ought then to look at that market significantly and grow it so that jobs can be created here, not goods living unrefined and unbeneficiated. So that is, when we look at the National Development Plan, it was designed to model itself along the Chinese plans. Their plan is 25 years, and then within the plans of the 25, they break it into 5-year plans where they are able to measure themselves that the first 5 years, this is what we achieve, the next 5 years, this is what we are going to be achieving. So we are now beginning to look at the new future plans that when the NDP ends in 2030, we will then be having a plan that takes us to 2055, when the Freedom Charter will be 100 years. And the execution and the way of implementation will model it with capacity of the state being increased, and then also learning from those who are doing well, Singapore, South Korea and China in particular, which we are learning a lot from them. So we will therefore be beginning to look at that, so that at the end of the 25 years, we can look back and say, this is a group of achievements, and not just sporadic here and there, but in a cohesive, collective way. And as the President Ramaphosa said, we need then in the next term, and then also in the next 25 years beyond the National Development Plan, make sure that the legacies of apartheid that are still showing within our own spatial spaces and in geographic space will be the thing of the past, where we need to reimagine a South Africa that is now somewhere towards where China is, where other growing giants in the south are, and then we are able then to also stand and say we have made it not only in Africa but also in the global south.
I think in our culture across the African continent is that true friendship is seen when things are bad, at your darkest hour, as well as the time when you're celebrating. And in this case, the ambassador, who has been here for 4 years, and he has been given an excellent send-off with almost the entire cabinet present. It shows how strong the relationship is, how excellent he has performed during his 4-year stay in South Africa, and through the video prepared, the kind of people he met from all corners of the country and different sectors. I think he was here at a critical moment during the COVID era, and he played a critical role to ensure that we stay safe. And South Africa-China relation in terms of trade, numbers do not lie. We've seen the rise of figures in terms of trade. It has always been in favor of China, but now we're starting to see the trend leveling up a bit. I think he played a critical role to ensure that our products enter the Chinese market. With more than 400 million middle class in China, I think going forward, even though he's leaving, I think we're expecting him to be critical, to be more using his leverage to ensure that Africa continues to be the best friend of South Africa in Africa. So going forward, we're expecting more from him. And there's no doubt that he's going to even higher position in China, given his seniority. And South Africa-China relation will be strengthened with his important role.